Thank you for tuning in to Model Car Building and Retirement. My name is Ken. Hope everybody's having a great day today. This is the first of a two-part series on my build out of the Revell 1968 Dodge Dart. This is a two-in-one kit where you can either go bone stock with the 440 Magnum or you can go full out racing with the 426 Hemi. In this particular case, I opted for the stock build out. Another thing is, on this video, I'm catering to the beginner. So I'm going to take it kind of slowly and cover a lot of little details that might just help you get started. Preparing for flashing issues and fitment issues and tips and tricks on how to get things together and how to detail paints and little intricate parts of the model. So I know that my followers or my subscribers vary. I have quite a few that are fellow model builders, some of them much better builders than myself, and others are just beginners. So this one's for the beginner. Not all my builds are going to be this way. I'll speed them up in the future because it could be boring watching a 1 hour build on a model if you already are a seasoned model builder. And what I'll do is in the future, I'll reference this video for a beginner to be able to get his feet wet. So if you like my content, please hit subscribe, like, comment below. If you ring that little bell icon too, you'll be alerted to my latest videos as they come out. I'm trying to get content out there as quickly as possible. And one other thing, I just want to thank everybody. By the time this video's out, I may have already hit there, but I'm well on the way of 2,000 subscribers. Only been at this for less than a month, folks. I was blown away when I had 50. I was blown away when I had 500. Went crazy when I got 1,000, and now I'm, coming up on 2,000. I thank you guys. It's all you guys that really helped me get this channel established. I certainly did not expect it to grow as fast as it did. I can only assume on my part of it is that I came along at the right time with the right content and the right delivery, or it's just sheer luck, and I think a lot of it is sheer luck. So once again, I thank you all very, very much. Stay tuned for the build, and we'll get right to it. Okay, so the first step in building a model for me is opening the box, inspecting the parts for damage, and then to sort out the parts that are going to get painted body color. I like to begin all my kits with the body paint first. For a couple reasons. One of them, it's my favorite part of the build. Two, it gives me inspiration on how to proceed with the rest of the model and the excitement of wanting to see the finished kit because I want to match it up to the paint job. So we're going to do that. All right, so we got our stock tires and our drag radials. Since it's a two option kit, either full race or stock, I'm going to be going stock. Set that aside. All right, we got our glass, windshield, side windows, headlights, it looks like. And I'm going to keep these in the package so they don't get scratched until they're ready to be installed when we build the kit there. Then we begin getting into the parts trees here. Being that this is a two-in-one kit, it includes two different hoods. So this hood is for the full-on racing with the big hood scoop and the opening for the hood scoop. And it looks like probably the Hemi engine here. And a different chassis. But I am going to go the stock route, so that's probably going to be found in this package here. I've already pre-cut the bags here. All right, so we start with the body. We're going to get that set aside. The chassis does get painted, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. But we have a firewall and a radiator support that we're going to want to go body color, so we're going to set that with the body side. Interior, seats, suspension parts, some engine parts. Okay, there's our hood. Definitely going to want that to be body color. Okay, so on these older kits, usually it's just the body and the hood, where the front and rear fascia is literally bumpers and grille, which are all going to be typically from a chrome tree. More modern kits are going to have a lot more parts that'll be painted body color, such as lower valance panels and whatnot. Let's quickly just look and make sure that we have everything covered here for painting separation. Oh, good. Nice couple set of wheels. You got your real wide race wheels. You got some, looks like Krager SS, which I love those. Those are my favorite wheel from the day, so that's going to be pretty. I'm going to definitely be using those. Also, it looks like it has the Magnum 500 wheels. You got your grille and bumpers and rear fascia. Okay, so we are going to worry right at this point here about separating the parts that are going to get body colored and preparing them. So let's get everything else out of the way. Okay, so the first thing I look for on the body, first of all, I look for damage. I didn't see any of that here. But on all these kits, you're going to have seam lines from the molds. And a perfect paint job requires 90% of it is preparation work. So if you don't prepare your model correct, no matter how good you can lay paint on, it's not going to look like a show quality model. So the very important, 90% important, is preparing the body. So some of the stuff we're looking for here, and another tool I'm going to use is a permanent marker, just to help me mark these areas so that when I begin working on them, I don't forget any of them. But if you look here, right at the end of the drip rail, on either side, you can barely see it, but there's a mold mark. That is not a normal mark for the car. So I'm going to mark that with a marker to know that I need to sand that. I feel around the edges here. The tops of the fenders are very sharp, so they're going to need a little bit of rounding off. That's usually where a mold release is done. So just going to put a little mark there across the tops of the doors, backs of the quarter panel. Okay. Looking at my wheel wells, this kit looks pretty good. Not too much flashing. Okay, here's a little spot on the wheel well. Let's see if we can show you here. Just mark that up with just a little nub of styrene. Okay, so that's about it on the body. Then we'll take a look at. Now the first step in the paint job is priming the body with a primer, and my go-to is from MCW, Model Car World Finishes. I am building this with the 440 instead of the Hemi version, and I'm going stock. And as you've seen, I prep the body first. I always start out with paint job. It's my favorite part of the build. and it gives me inspiration. Depending on how that paint job comes out, it inspires me to complete the rest of the kit and how much detail I want to give it, because if the paint job really isn't exciting to me, I'll probably not detail the model out so much. But if it looks really, really beautiful, it just motivates me to do my best everywhere else. So it's just my preference. Okay, so what I do then is I go through the entire kit, and I don't follow the instructions in sequence basically, but I take every part that can be glued together with plastic glue, and my go-to is this Tamiya extra thin cement, and I will glue everything together that I can that's going to be painted similar color. For example, the seat backs to the seats, and most of the engine will get Hemi orange, and then I'll attach a few extra pieces if they can be easily detailed to a different color after the fact. But if they're really small, like distributors or whatnot, I'll probably paint those separately and apply them later. So what we're going to do now is I'll get a few of these assembled with the Tamiya glue, and we'll come right back. Okay, so as I am preparing to glue parts together, some of these other older kits that have been repopped a few times, such as this one here, the engine heads here have a little bit of flash around them, and also a little bit of sprue from when I cut it off the tree there. So just some simple little fixes there. I will come by with my X-Acto knife, and I will just shave off a little bit of flashing there. And then I will use, this is like a little sanding stick for nail file. It's coarse on one side, a little finer on the other. I'll start out with the fine side and just kind of file that edge down a little bit. And I'm going to do this with all the parts that we're looking at on the table here. Every part is going to be cleaned and filed before it's glued together. And then after it's glued together, I'll clean up the seams. And I can use various tools here. Regular pieces of sandpaper, maybe 800 grit. The sanding stick. I have these little sanding files that are about 300-400 grit. They all work well for cleaning up the parts. You know, and some of these details, like these exhaust manifolds, you know, they get a little bit of flash on them. So, all right, I got my sanding stick. That's too big for the nooks and crannies. This file's too big. All my files are too big. So when I got to get in there tight between like the header pipes here, I'll just take some sandpaper. This is 800 grit sandpaper, just kind of fold it up. And I get it in all little nooks and crannies. Just whatever it takes to get it done. And there's also like a mold seam on the end, so you know, you just kind of file around the end there. Okay. Now what's really nice about this Tamiya extra thin cement is it comes with this very nice little fine applicator here. And for fine parts like this seat back here, you know, you pinch it together, and where the two seams are, you just touch it almost like a panel liner, and capillary action will pull that glue around. Or worst case scenario, you can just swipe the seam real quick like that. Just hold that for just a few seconds, and it is glued together. Another tip I want to share with you when you're gluing parts together is just don't go glue bombing together and gluing it all together at one time, especially if you have a little fitment issue. For example, on this engine block, notice how we're nice and tight, there's no gap here, but then as you get the end of the tail shaft of the transmission, you got a little gap. Looks good here, once again a little gap there. So what you do is pinch it together, apply your glue on one end, and let that set up for a couple minutes. And once it's set up, it only takes a few minutes. Once that's set up, then come back here and pinch the transmission together nice and tight. Run your glue right along that seam. And I'm not even gonna bother turning around to do the bottom right now. I'm gonna just hold that for a few minutes and let that set up as well. It takes a little bit of time, but it keeps you from having gaps, because you're going to find later that if you have a little gap back at your tunnel back here when you try to put your drive shaft in, it's not going to look right, or it's not going to fit into the hole because the hole's too wide and too loose. But I'm going to hold that. I mean, it's going to probably take another minute to set up. Just wanted to share that tip with you. Okay, so you're going to run into some fitment issues too. So at this point on the engine, I'm trying to get the transmission pan glued into the bottom of the transmission, and it's got little metal pins on the one side of the pan and some holes on the bottom of the transmission. But they're just not fitting in there very well. Just won't go in there. Now you don't want to force that, because if you force that, you're going to probably spread out your glue joints that you just so carefully sealed up and closed. So what you want to do is get your little pin vise out with a drill bit that is just either the same or slightly larger than the male pin on your transmission pan there. And we'll just go in those two holes and we're going to just bore them out a little bit. I'm going to squeeze that so I don't open up the transmission by accident. Just give it a few spins and you'll see that you're pulling out a little bit of material with your drill bit, which is what you're intending to do. Just a couple quick little spins there and that should do it. Now we've opened up those holes real nice. That pan just fits in there beautiful, ready to glue. All right, the engine sub-assembly is completed. This is going to go to paint. It'll be painted Hemi orange. And I left off all the other details that are going to be painted different colors, and I'm going to leave them on the parts tree and paint them separately, and then after everything has been painted, I'll assemble them. And same with the interior. The only thing I'm going to assemble right now is the seats and the seat backs, and I filed and sanded all the edges. So we're going to move on to the next sub-assembly. Okay, so then into the chassis. Not a lot of sub-assembly to do here. You got your engine cradle and your sway bar, which I started attaching the sway bar. I got one last glue joint to do here. So I'm gonna glue that, and then I'm gonna attach that to the bottom of the chassis, and then that'll be ready to take the paint. Okay, then the final sub-assembly will be the rear end, which includes the leaf springs, which are already attached to the axle area. You just have to have the front of your differential and the back cover of your differential glued on, so we'll get that together, and then everything's going to go to paint. All right, so we're going to paint the engine Hemi orange. What I'm going to be actually using is Tamiya's X6 orange. Every other part to the parts tree, except for the exhaust, is going to go semi-gloss with Tamiya's X18. Both of these are going to be mixed 50-50 with Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. And I got that right for a change. Now everything's going to be painted semi-gloss here except for the exhaust. And then we'll detail out individual items with my acrylic paint pens or individual paints as we move forward. So off to the booth for black, some silver, and some orange. Okay, so most of the assembly has now been airbrushed. You know, the body's completed. The engine I went orange, and pretty much the rest of the parts on the tree I went with the semi-gloss black, including the interior, which is going to be black. Otherwise, that would have been a different color for sure. Now, when you have these parts clamped on your clamps or on your sprue, and you take them off, you might see a little area like here where the paint did not cover. That's going to be barely noticeable in the model anyways, but you just take either a brush and black paint or these acrylic markers, which I really love, touch it up, and you're done. Now we can go over all this with detail pens, and that's what I'll be doing. For example, I'll be using the silver to do the exhaust system. I started right there, you can see. It's a pretty nice finish. Now you don't have to airbrush, it's my preference because I have it, but you can't deny the finish that you get. It's a very nice finish. Now, you know, there are guys that can really do that with a rattle can. There's guys that could even brush paint and get a pretty nice finish, but my go-to is airbrushing. All right, so everything's been basically painted. So now we're going to start detailing as we go about the assembly, so stay tuned. So I began detailing out the engine a little bit. You know, I painted everything orange in the first place, but now I'm going over and I got the exhaust manifold silver and the transmission silver. And I'll tell you, my newest go-to, I don't know how long these have been around, but it's an acrylic paint pen. This one has two tips. It has the brush tip on this side, which comes to a nice little point, and the other side has what they call the fine tip. My favorite is this brush side here. But, you know, instead of a paintbrush and a paint bottle or airbrushing and masking, this is a great alternative. And just to show you how easy that is to apply, get it frame, I'm sorry. Look how nice that covers. It just covers so good. I'll put a link in the description for the silver one that I'm using here. The colored ones I got at Hobby Lobby, but they're available on the internet too. There's also a company called AK, I think it's AK Interactive or something like that, that sells them. But with that point, you can get really, really nice detail here. Now, I'm not in front of my magnifier, so this may be difficult for me. But with that precision tip, you can go right up to the edge and paint. Coverage is outstanding. And this works good too on the exhaust. Like in this case, I am not going to spray or brush the exhaust, but I'm just going to take the paint pen on its side of the brush and just give it nice little fine little strokes here. And look at that coverage. And cover the ends. You could do the piping. You know, you just have to spin it around and make sure you get it all covered. Got one half of the exhaust done. This acrylic pen really is doing a nice job coverage-wise. So I'm just continuing on the other side here. Another thing I'm going to do is on these exhaust tips. Later, I'm going to use my chrome pen to chrome those out. I'm also going to get my pin vise out. I'm going to drill a little hole inside those two and get some black in there to make them look like true exhaust pipes. So, okay. All right, so I got the engine all assembled here. Decided to go with the chrome tree parts for the valve covers and the chrome alternator. Not quite what factory would have done, but I'd like to think that this is day 2. Kid bought the car in 1968. The next day he went to the speed shop and saw that the chrome pieces were quite affordable and he had some money left over, so he bought them and installed them on day 2. It looks pretty good. I did have some people ask me why I'm not detailing my engines with spark plug wires. And to be honest, my answer was that before I had my channel, it was myself and my wife and maybe a few people on Facebook that I shared my models with, and then it goes on a shelf, so it just never seemed worth the effort. But now that I have a channel, I do want to step up my game and do that. But I have to admit, I have got very fat fingers here, and I bought all the supplies. I have like a 0.3 millimeter wire, and I got the pin vise to drill my distributor out, but I have the darndest time getting all 9 wires, 8 for the spark plugs and 1 for the coil. Darndest time getting them all bundled up and glued into that distributor cap. So what I'm going to do, and forgive me, I don't have any vendor names in front of me, but the aftermarket has pre-wired distributors. And they come in various wires, colors too, like Moroso and whatnot. That's the way I'm going to go. It's pre-wired distributor, and then you still have to drill out where they're going to go on the block. But that's the easy part. It's getting all 9 wires drilled and into that distributor cap. That's difficult. So I'm going to get into it, but I got to purchase a few sets of wires. So last thing I'm going to do to my engine is just a little bit of dress up with panel liner. Do be careful, because panel liner doesn't work well with all paints. But I'm going to keep this engine somewhat clean, because my look that I'm going after is that this is a brand new car, 1968. Although the finish will be a little nicer. But I'm just touching the panel liner, dressing up that fake looking chrome alternator. You just touch that at various places, and it really dresses up that cheap chrome look. I will get it right around my valve covers, around where my front water pump area would be. But I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to dirty this up too much. Just going to hit the tops of my valve cleaners and let that dress up a little bit. That's it. I'm not going to go much more than that, because I want this to be show quality, brand new car here. Everything went together really well. I did have to drill out a little bit for the carburetor to fit better into the intake, and the decal on the air cleaner went into place really nice, but it's kind of domed and has a profile to it. So I did, after the glue set, or the decal set a little bit, I used micro sol, 2 applications, and that, as you can see, it kind of softens that decal and let it conform to the air cleaner. So really came out really nice. All right, onward we march. Next up, I've gathered all my interior parts to begin assembly and detailing there. Again, I'm going with a black interior, so everything was painted semi-gloss black. Now, if you wanted to, the carpet is textured on this model, and they do sell a flocking material, and there's a lot of videos out there that show how to do that. I don't do that unless it's going to be a convertible or something where the door opens to really be able to see that, because trust me, when this model is completed, you're not going to be able to see this carpet. Okay, so, and that goes for the rest of the details for the interior. Don't go crazy when you can't see it all. But I'll go through here. Have some various tools. I'm going to use my silver pen, silver acrylic pen. I'm going to use my little chrome pen. I've got some Tamiya X32 silver titanium. Oops. That I'm going to use to dress up the console a little bit. And we're going to hit the knobs and, detail out this dash a little bit. And I'll come back and show you a few things there. And then check your decals too, because you may have a speedometer and whatnot decals. A lot of times it's just easier to paint them. I'll get started here, and we'll come back when I have a few details to share with you. Here's a little example of some detailing on the door card and the steering wheel. And this is just using a chrome pen. So on the steering wheel, I detailed out the chrome horn ring, which would have been chrome back on the 68 Dart. And then also on the door panel itself, the window cranks, and there's the little door release, the self-adjusting mirror, and even the ashtray. Remember when they used to put ashtrays in cars? Okay, so that's detailed out, and quite simple. I just get myself a little Maltol pen. This is actually a knockoff that I got off of Amazon someplace, but it's a very good quality pen. And you just very carefully you know, take your fine tip and you can just kind of color the raised areas. Like so. I'm going to give a few tips and tricks out there for some of the beginners. Detailing the interior, you know, there are small little pieces there. But for example, the seat backs. On the Dart, if you look at the real interior, the real photo of a car, you're going to see there's a little tiny chrome insert in the back of that seat. Now, I'm not precise enough with my chrome pen to even do that. I'd make a disaster mess of it, okay? So what I do is I take my chrome pen and we'll load it up inside of a little bottle cap like this. And then I will take a toothpick. Sorry. You have to work kind of quick because it sets up pretty quick in here. But you take your little chrome pen, dip it in your toothpick, and then very carefully just take the tip of your toothpick and wipe it across where you want that little tiny bit of shiny chrome to go. So there's one tip for you. Secondary on the dashboard. First of all, they give you some nice decals with this kit. There's a decal for the whole speedometer array and gauges. There's also a tiny little one for the radio gauges there. So I got them in there. They went in pretty nice. I did hit it with a little bit of microsol to just settle them down and let them shrink into position. Then I took my chrome pen and just carefully hit my, let me get a better pointer here. Took my chrome pen and just hit all the little buttons and whatnot. Then I tried to get really creative and get the chrome trim around some of this other area here, because some of the models had that. You know, let's face it, this was a Dodge Dart. It was not a Lincoln Continental, so it didn't have a lot of fine details in the interior. But I'm not very good freehanding with the pen. I tried the toothpick. I wasn't even very good with that. So there's two other options. One of them is you take like a little bit of aluminum or silver paint, blotter it on a piece of paper, and just keep wiping your brush until it's almost invisible. It's called dry brushing. Once you got just that little bit of paint on your brush, you can go back to the detail and just kind of gently wipe that back and forth. And believe it or not, that little gray or silver, it'll transfer to any high areas there. And this is good for a lot of areas, like the under chassis of your car, engine compartment you could do stuff with. So there's one thing, except for if you're loaded up a little too much with paint, it's kind of difficult to clean up. The third option, not the best option, but I take a little bit of chalk. And these are earth tone chalks that I got at Hobby Lobby. And I just take a razor blade, X-Acto knife. Can't find it, hold on a second. Okay, so you take a chalk and you just take your X-Acto knife there and you just shave off a little bit of dust, okay? Now with a nice dry brush, and I have some brushes that are just dedicated to powders here, but I'll just dip my brush into that powder a little bit. And then I'll just carefully dry brush across there, and that'll give a little bit of detail. It's the least of my favorite options, but it does work. And then you can clean up. It's a powder, so it's going to wipe away, but you can clean up. If you got dust where you didn't want it, you can clean up with the Q-tip, either dry or damp. So there's one tip. Another tip I want to share with you is on the steering wheel and steering column of this Dart kit, they included a little tachometer. And I thought, well, that's cool. And then they even included a little decal with the faces of the gauge on there. So that's really cool. But the thing is, when it goes to installing it, there was no positive location to stick that. Meaning you've got to try to glue something flat onto something round, And unless you're very precise and have instant curing glue, very difficult to do. So what I did is I incorporated the pinning method. So I took a little tiny pin vise drill, 30 thousandths in diameter, and I drilled a little hole in the top of the steering column and a little hole on the bottom of the tachometer, took some 30 thousandths music wire, dipped it in glue and dipped it into, or stuck it into the tachometer and let that set up. And now I'm ready to attach it to the steering column. And I do have a video out about pinning. Be sure to watch that. It's how to pin small parts to your model kit, and it shows you how to drill and pin that. Now I can't do this on camera because I have to get behind a magnifier, but you're just basically going to dip that little wire into the glue, and you're going to take some tweezers, place it on the column, and it's going to have a nice positive location. I'll show you in a second, and I have the photo above to show you the detail. Okay, so finally got that tachometer glued into the column. And again, without the pinning, I would have never been able to get that to line up and be aligned and stay in place. So that pinning, this thing isn't going anywhere now. Okay, one last little detail is on the console top, came completely chrome in the model kit. So I painted some titanium silver with my Tamiya paint, acrylic paint, and I was even a little bit sloppy. I got it where I needed it, but I did get up on the top ridges. But the cool part about that is this paint is now set up and dried a little bit. Just take a Q-tip and just start rubbing across the top. You're not trying to dig the paint back out. You're just rubbing it across the top. This is sort of like the grill video that I did where you can dress up your grill of your car. So if you haven't watched that one, go back and watch. But what that does is it gives it a nice, like a brushed aluminum or a dollar look in the console, but yet nice chrome edges. Just brings a little bit more life to it. And this kit actually has a decal for the Prundle. The park reverse neutral shifter and everything. I haven't installed that yet, but a very tiny little decal goes there. So this kit's pretty nice. All right, I'll come back after I've got the entire interior all assembled. Interior is now complete. I'll tell you what, that's a pretty looking interior. It's, you know, it's somewhat basic. It's not detailed out to the max, but I think it has plenty of detail. When you're looking through the windows, you're going to be very limited on what you see anyways. But I think that came out very nice, so we're moving on. Okay, so that concludes part one of our two-part series on the build-out of the 1968 Revell Dodge Dart in its stock factory form. If you are enjoying my content, please hit the subscribe button. Feel free to comment below and tell your friends about me. And if you ring that little bell icon, you'll be alerted to my latest videos as they come out. And subscribing is absolutely free, folks. It just lets you find me easier in the future. Thank you, and part two will be out here shortly.